That is so, so beautiful. Excuse me. Oh, I left my water. I'm going to need that. Can tell already. Excuse me. I thought I got that out earlier, but then the song came along and I got all choked up. Okay. Oh, wow. So, glad to see so many of you here today. Gosh, I'm really excited to be here. I left my own church to be here, and we have a pretty exciting guest speaker over there too, and I know that house is packed as well, and so I'm just so glad that there's so many people participating today to find out how can we be used by God. And so one of the ways that we can be used by God is through prayer, through opening up to the presence. And so how much do we really understand about prayer? We've been talking about it all month, I know. I looked into the future. You're talking about it in the future. Don't look at the what's coming up and go, oh God, we already did that. I think I'm going to skip church today. Don't, because you can't know enough. It's all about going within. And it's such a precious, precious journey that I don't want you to miss any of it. And so, of course, it's a journey we create ourselves. And, but, you got to show up. We have to participate. So how much do we really understand about prayer? I brought a book along. You can't really even see the title. It's A Closer Walk with God. It's Jim Rosemergy. He's a Unity minister, but this is my favorite book on affirmative prayer, because he really takes you through the journey from beseeching and begging in our humanness and in our despair, all the way to enlightenment through prayer. And so I'm going to be quoting out of this book from Jim Rosemergy this morning. So one of the things he says right off is prayer is a mystery and will continue to puzzle us until it is no longer an attempt to have God serve us. I don't know how that hits you, but when I read that, it's like, oh, okay, how am I expecting God to serve me? It will continue to puzzle us until prayer is no longer an attempt to have God serve us. Like, dear God, help me get a new job. I need a new job, right? I would love to lose weight. I want a new car. I want to live in a better neighborhood. These aren't mine. I just, I have a great car and I live in a great neighborhood. But what are the prayers that we think about? If you can think over the arc of your life since adulthood, since your 20s, you've been out on your own, what are the things that you are praying? Even though you might not even be aware that you're praying, our thoughts are prayers, sorry. But, so where's your attention going? What are you praying for? Jim Rosemergy says, we persist in asking God to come down and repair our human world. Like, please God, give us better leaders. Help us end hunger and starvation. People need clean water and violence. Right? We see this all the time just turning on the TV. These prayers are going out there. Give us world peace. That's a big one. And this is what we do. This is kind of our race consciousness, our culture. It's everywhere. And this is sometimes how we also pray. And we know there's a better way, right? We know that because we've been coming here and we've been listening and we've been practicing, and you've developed your own prayer practice over years. It might not be something where you set a timer and this is when I'm going to do it. It might not be regimented, but you are participating in signs of mind. And through that process, the process of your thoughts becoming prayers, you are continuously praying. So my talk title today didn't get posted anywhere because I kind of dropped the communication ball on that. Praying the prayer of the divine being. And so really it's about recognizing who we already are, right? And praying from the awareness of the presence. Big part of that is focusing on our relationship with the divine. Oftentimes we talk about God as being out there, and I do the same thing, but it's just kind of our language, or I'll say God, and then the pronouns come in, and he and she, and all of that. We know God isn't a he or she. Try and put on your metaphysical ears, your tuners. When you hear anybody talking about God out there, you know where God is, what God is, and you can interpret that for yourself. When somebody says God, you just go to your center. That's God, right? God is everywhere present. But for you personally, God is right here. Okay, so we're beseeching God, we're treating God like he's something other than he's not. If we're talking about the relationship and changing that relationship, imagine who you idolize that you would think, wow, I would love to be that person's friend. Nobody? For me, it's Oprah. Okay? I think me and Oprah would be really good friends. That's what I envision. But do you think Oprah would want to be my friend if I became her stalker? No. Right? No, probably not. If I called her every day asking her for favors, asking her for a better life, asking her for a new car, right? Asking, what's under my seat? Is it a new car, a new house? Asking her for world peace. Does that seem reasonable? No. Every day I'm calling her and I'm asking her for something. And friends won't stay our friends very long if all we're doing is asking them for favors. Right? How many friends do you keep that way? And have you had people who wanted to be your friend? I know I have. And they're always they're that little woodpecker, wanting attention and wanting this and wanting that. And so of course we want to bless these people and love these people and see them in their wholeness. But it's not the best way to create friendship. So when we are constantly badgering God for favors, that doesn't do us any good, right? We're not developing a relationship by asking God for favors all the time. So when we talk to God as if some outside entity can come down here and fix everything, give us clean water. There's people in our own country that don't have clean water to drink, right? We want God to come down and fix these things. Then we're anthropomorphizing God. We're creating God in our image. That can't be right. Right? That's not good. We're creating God in our image like a mighty father figure who can clean up the mess that we've created. Kiss the boo-boo. Right? Make everything better. Or a fairy tale parental unit, fairy godmother who can wave a magic wand and just have all the bad things go away. But the fairy godmother gets to do that at her own discretion, right? So when we're thinking about God coming down and fixing things, or the fairy godmother waving her magic wand, you can really see how that's giving our power away. And so we are going to try and look at this another way, a way we're already looking at it. We are going to become part of the solution. We're not going to say, Daddy, come fix things and come make it better. Because what if Daddy says no? Then what are you going to do? When we learn to pray from our spiritual beingness, we learn to pray the prayer of the divine being. There is only one answer in any prayer that you and that is an awareness of the presence of God. That is the answer to every prayer. An awareness of the presence of God. If you think about the relationship I was talking about before, how we kind of have this father-child relationship of our own doing, right? This isn't God's idea. We've developed this relationship, and maybe we've grown up a little, and we're able to look at it a little differently. But until we know that the answer to every prayer is an awareness of the presence of God, then we're always going to be looking outside of ourselves. Jim Rosenberg explains a life of prayer begins with human need. For the need turns us Godward. We have struggled and tried to do it our way, but finally we realize our limitations, and therefore we seek the Almighty's help. Please note that at this time in our prayer life, he says, we do not want God. We want God to do something that we have been unable to do. So we turn to God. We forget to bring God into the equation at the beginning, or that God is already there when we see a challenge. He's saying that only after we've exhausted all of our own efforts, then we turn Godward and expect God to wave his magic wand. But he's not saying it's not okay to have human needs. He's not saying that. Our needs, our desires, our dreams, our aspirations, a lot of that comes from God, from the God within, right? Our own, the inspirations we get, and they lead us to God. And that is always good. Whatever is leading you closer to God is always good. He is saying, Jim Rosenberg, that we may want to consider bringing God into the equation a little earlier in the process. You know, it's just that we have this habit with our ego that we just think we can do everything, that I'm standing in my power, but what does that really mean when you're saying that? If you're saying I'm standing in my power and I can do this, that doesn't really leave a lot of room unless you are so ingrained with the definition of power that you know that that power is God. We can really trip ourselves up with some of the new thought phraseology because it sounds so good when we hear it, and then we say it, and then sometimes we say it inappropriately because it sounds good and we think it serves us. It's really a good idea to go back to remembering what those phrases actually mean. Standing in your power means standing in God. It doesn't mean I can do it without God. Okay, so Jim Rosenberg also says, while the prayer of the divine being is a pure expression of the soul and its truest desires that are based on the discovery of oneness and experiencing the presence, the prayer of the human being dismisses this truth because a more pressing matter needs our attention. The body must be healed now. Employment is needed now, right? What if we were to just stop? Stop praying as if God owes us something, right? We're so entitled sometimes. God doesn't owe you anything. God doesn't know you need anything. There's a mind blow. God is in the absolute realm. God operates, and it's here and everywhere present, and in the relative realm through us and our understanding, but in the absolute realm of God, which is also here and now, there is nothing that you need. There is no lack. That isn't a thing. Absolute law does not know lack, and therefore can't look at you and deem that you need something. Law only sees you as perfect. So there you go. The end. Let's pack it up and go home. All right, so fear is this illusion that we create, right? We're creating this illusion. I better look at the time. All right. Fear is the illusion that we create in our humanness. Here's an interesting little thing. Hu in Sanskrit is little god. Man is, us. We are little god men. So think about that too. Elevate, when I say in our humanness, it's kind of where we get stuck. But you can also elevate that idea of being human. It's not a limitation. We are little god men. And that's kind of exciting. So fear is just this big illusion that we have created in our humanness, ego mind, where we don't understand the world around us and we blame and we think it's all everyone else's fault, right? And that separation creates fear. But it doesn't feel like an illusion, does it? It feels pretty gosh darn real. When you're at that 11th hour, maybe you're 25 years old and you're trying to pay your rent and your roommate took off to a party and the rent is due, and the fear of, if the landlord told us if we did this one more time, he's gonna kick us out. Whatever it was for you, we've all had those kinds of experiences, especially when we're younger, when we're getting our feet under our grounds. We each choose this human existence, though, to have those experiences. So what I mean when I say that fear is an illusion is that it's of this earthly plane. It is of the relative world. It is not of the absolute world. There is no lack in the absolute realm. So in and through the race consciousness, are you familiar with that term, race consciousness? Okay, so it's just kind of like all of our beliefs just kind of feed into this greater consciousness of the human race. And like aging, doctors and scientists can't figure out why the body's ages at all. And so one of the reasons we give is, well, that's kind of what we've done. So, well, all my ancestors did it, so I'm going to do it. And that's part of race consciousness. But also ideas of, like what we're talking about today. This will go into race consciousness, and your attention to it will go into race consciousness. And that helps elevate the consciousness of the planet. That's another way that we are all connected. So we as spiritual beings know beyond a shadow of a doubt that no separation actually occurs between us and God. We know that. Sometimes it's just an intellectual knowing. Sometimes we have the experience of that. We know that because our spiritual beingness is still connected to God mind in the absolute realm. Our human being has been given the gift of memory loss. That's a hard one. When we are born into this realm, you've seen babies. They seem to kind of know what's going on. They're watching your aura. You see them looking up at the light, right? They sense who's good, who's safe. They know all these things. But then they come into this world and they get to learn that not everything's safe and I need to stick close to mom or dad. And they forget. They forget the presence. We kind of beat it out of them. And that sounds mean, but it's kind of it's the process we have to do to get to where we are to really know. Because we're not coming into this plane just to do as we did before. Whatever level of enlightenment you came in as, you're not just going to stay there. We're going to grow. And in order to grow, we've got to go through some darkness. And in order to go through the darkness, we have to forget who we are. So that, the baby comes in and maybe the baby's level of understanding and enlightenment is here, but then they forget and they go down here and they've had whatever contract, I'm going to learn forgiveness. And so they get beat up a lot and they get to learn about forgiveness. So they've forgotten, so they've kind of stepped down, and then through all these trials and tribulations, then they end up here, right? They, us, all of us, we get to go through this process of learning and being and creating more. So having fear, here's another weird one. Having fear about anything kind of confirms the idea that we believe in more than one power. That sucks, right? God is good and is everywhere present. There's only one presence and power in my life, and that is God, the good omnipotent. And that's a great affirmation. But if we're putting our attention elsewhere, then how that has the power. And we in our intellect and in our spiritual beingness know that God is the greater power. But there's still that other power that we're giving attention to sometimes, right? The fear. We're turning our attention towards lack sometimes, or fear sometimes. It's occasional, hopefully, it's not every day. But remember, our thoughts are prayers, so what are you praying to? What are you praying to? If your thoughts are centered on what you don't have, or on how things could be better, whew, that's a big one. We love to do that. Wouldn't it just be so much better if they would just do it my way? Right? We would have world peace if everyone would just listen to me. Because I know best. I know better. I know that this world out there could be better. That's me blaming. That's me putting the attention on what isn't right, not on what is right. And so I'm giving my power, my attention, sending my prayers to what isn't right when I have those thoughts. So stop it. Because that feeds race consciousness too. And so, good always trumps evil. That's dualistic thinking of our earthly plane. That doesn't exist in the absolute realm. There is no evil. There is no other power. It's all God. God the good, omnipotent. Okay, so I think I've talked enough about that, and I'm looking at the time, and I want to get into this other stuff here. Oh, here's a little, I see a Two Worlds quote by Jim Rosemurdy. When we live in a world of two powers, even if we think that God is the greater power, we live in a world of conflict. So if you're not feeling completely at peace and balanced all the time, you might want to look at where you're giving your power to, what you're praying to, besides the one source, besides the truth. I came across the Ho'oponopono prayer this morning, and I wanted, and I talked about this a few weeks ago, and Reverend Rebecca did this a couple years ago. And it's just so powerful, because everything I've said to you today you've heard before. And you've heard this before too. But when I key in on certain things, it's like, wow, that really takes it from metaphysical understanding to that next level of going inward with the mysticism of these ideas about prayer. So I wanted to touch on this again. I don't know if you've heard of Joe Vitale. He's an inspirational speaker. He's an author. He was one of the main individuals featured in The Secret, if you've seen that film. And this is from an article, which I think was excerpted from a book that he and Dr. Len wrote. But he says, many who have read this message have found it to be incredibly inspiring, but question whether the story is really true. This author, Joe Vitale, is highly respected, inspirational speaker, prolific author, and this is his story of Dr. Len. Dr. Joe Vitale says, 2 years ago, I heard about a therapist in Hawaii who cured a complete ward of criminally insane patients. If you have not heard this, raise your hand. Oh, okay. You are just in for a treat. Okay. This is so awesome. All right. I heard about a therapist in Hawaii who cured a complete ward of criminally insane patients without ever seeing any of them. The psychologist would study an inmate's chart and then look within himself to see how he created that person's illness. As he improved himself, the patient improved. So he never even laid eyes, never in an office, one-on-one session, nothing with any of these inmates, and yet he looked within himself to see how he created that person's illness. Joe Vitale says, when I first heard this story, I thought it was an urban legend. How could anyone heal anyone else by healing himself? How could even the best self-improvement master cure the criminally insane? It didn't make any sense. It wasn't logical. So I dismissed the story. However, I heard it again a year later. I heard that the therapist had used a Hawaiian healing process called I'm going to do this wrong, Ho'oponopono. Sometimes I can say it, sometimes I can't. Ho'oponopono. Am I saying it right, Shelley?
I think so.
Okay. Ho'oponopono. If the story was true at all, I had to know more, he says. Now, I'm not going to attempt Dr. Len's first name. It's Hawaiian and very long. So he'll just say his name is Dr. Len. He explained that he worked at Hawaii State Hospital for 4 years. That ward where they kept the criminally insane was dangerous. Psychologists quit on a monthly basis. The staff called in sick a lot or simply quit. People would walk through that ward with their backs against the wall, afraid of being attacked by patients. It was not a pleasant place to live, work, or visit. Dr. Len told me that he never saw patients. He agreed to have an office and to review their files. When he looked at those files, he would work on himself. As he worked on himself, patients began to heal. After a few months, patients that had to be shackled were being allowed to walk freely, he told me. Others who had to be heavily medicated were getting off their medications, and those who had no chance of ever being released were being freed. I was in awe, says Dr. Vitale. Not only that, this is Dr. Len again, but the staff began to enjoy coming to work. Absenteeism and turnover disappeared. We ended up with more staff than we needed because patients were being released, and all the staff was showing up to work. This is where I had to ask the million-dollar question. What were you doing within yourself that caused those people to change? I was simply healing the part of me that created them, he said. I didn't understand. Dr. Len explained that total responsibility for your life means that everything in your life, simply because it is in your life, is your responsibility. In a literal sense, the entire world is your creation. I asked Dr. Len how he went about healing himself. What was he doing exactly when he looked at those patients' files? I just kept saying, I'm sorry, and I love you, over and over again, he explained. That's it? That's it. Turns out that loving yourself is the greatest way to improve yourself. And as you improve yourself, you improve your world. Dr. Len's message may be hard to believe, yet it's amazingly simple. He states that we are all responsible for everything we see in our world. By taking full personal responsibility and then healing the wounded places within ourselves, we can literally heal ourselves and the world. As related by Joe Vitale in the radio interview, Dr. Len suggests a 4-stage process for this Ho'oponopono work. Whenever a place for healing presents itself in your life, open to the place where the hurt resides within you. After identifying this place with as much feeling as you can, say the below 4 statements. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. So how many of us believe that I am responsible for what I do and say, you are responsible for what you do and say, but I'm not responsible for what someone else responds to that. If you have a reaction to what I'm saying, that's your reaction. That's on you. That's kind of how we operate, right? If I have a reaction to what you're saying, then that's obviously my responsibility to figure out what's going on within me, and that's true. This is all true. This doesn't go away, this is still true. And this is where we're operating. But to get it on such a deep level that we are all connected, that there is no separation, that we are manifested into this life. We are that baby who is still seeing the absolute realm, and then we forget who and what we are, and we grow up and we come through these processes, and this is a good place to land. I am responsible for me. I get to love you as much as I can possibly love you as my God self. And if that triggers you, or if I say something that upsets you, then that's your reaction, because I love you, and that's your stuff. It kind of serves us, but taking it in, really going in, thinking bigger than we can imagine, thinking bigger than you can think. Because it really is about the power of imagination when we don't understand something. That is law, actually. We are all one. We don't understand how and why we're all one, do we? Not all the time. Not usually. But that doesn't make it not true. And I know you hear all the time that what we see out in our world is a direct experience of what's going on inside. I know you hear that all the time, and I know you're implementing that. I know you catch yourself when you see something out there and go, Steve said this is a reflection of me, or whoever you heard it from. Our outer world is a reflection of our inner world. And so if that is true, why can't this be true? Maybe it's the word responsibility that trips us up. Maybe we think that it's not my job. That's your job. That's your stuff, right? That's for you to work on. And that's true too. But if I can support you in that process by loving you and doing that healing work within me where I am sorry that whatever happened in your life, I helped create, that got you to this point where you're upset. I have a story for you. This just reminded me of a story. Okay. I'll tell a quick story. I'll try. Okay. Yeah, lovely. Thank you. Don't tell me that. Okay, so I work in behavioral health in a very rural, poverty-stricken county in California. And I had a patient who suffers from severe depression. I am a case manager. I'm not a clinical anything. I do casework. But I have one-on-one interactions, and I really do sometimes get involved in these people's lives on a very personal level. And this gentleman was kind of new in my caseload, And so he was telling me, you know, people don't understand depression, even the doctors, they don't, if they haven't experienced it, they don't understand it because, you know, I look fine from the outside, but sometimes I'm just really not functional. And so, getting to know him, getting to know his wants, his needs, how I can serve him, I determined that he could probably go on Social Security and get disability in California, and that's something I can help him with. Well, the very next day we had a staff meeting that we had. It's like a quarterly meeting, just to kind of check in with not patients so much as just processes and procedures. And we had this one young lady, young mom, who is a peer support. Now, I don't know if we have these in Nevada, but in California, they've got peer support people. And what they are, these are people that have come through their own addictions, come through their own mental health challenges, have gone through treatments, are working on their stuff, and they're now functional, active members of society. They can participate, they're healthy, and so they get hired on as these peer partners who can partner with some of our clients to just kind of walk them through some steps. And so this lady, the next day at the meeting, is a peer partner, and she was talking about how she just got certified in this Social Security process. It's called SOAR. I don't know what it stands for, but it's something where you can have a mental health patient who will need that extra help in filling out all the paperwork and going through the process to get disability, because otherwise you're going to get denied. All kinds of things are going to happen, and it could take a couple years before you get it, as opposed to going through this SOAR process where it might only take 6 months. So I'm like, oh my gosh, she's certified, great, I'm going to send my client over there. We'll call him Ben. I don't know who Ben is, we just made that up. So Ben is going to go, I'm going to send him over to her. Now she just got certified, she's brand new at this. She even told us at the meeting, I did this, I passed with flying colors online, but of course they gave me this pretend client whose life was easy for me to fix, and you know. So now this peer partner has gone through all of her stuff, all of her life, has had her trials and tribulations, and still she can be aggressive and very gruff and difficult to work with, because she's still working through her stuff. But you know, I sent my client over to her, and well, he wasn't doing great that day, so he told her, I don't want you to do anything with my mental health. I just want to fill out this paperwork. I just need to go home. I need to go to bed. And so in her newness in this position, she didn't ask those probing questions. She asked, are you homeless? He said no. He is at severe risk of being homeless. He is in his apartment by the skin of his teeth, and at any moment he will be homeless. She didn't ask any follow-up questions, are you at risk, or anything like that, because she was just kind of a little bit triggered by him and wanting to do her job perfectly. Do you have an income? Yes. He doesn't have an income. His income, in California they have what's called general relief. You get $300 to live on for the month until your disability comes through, right? It's just kind of a holding, here's some grocery money until you get your disability. He told her he had an income, so all of these things were going wrong. Everything was going wrong. Her attitude, she was a little bit nervous about the situation. He was the one being gruff and just wanted to do what he had to do to go home. And so I didn't hear about any of that, and a week or two goes by, and I'm thinking, yay, Marco's getting disability, and Ben's getting disability. And so I get some mail from Social Security, because he didn't have a post office box, so I got the mail, and I'm not going to open it. Well, Ben goes into a deep depression, to the point where I have to go to his house with the sheriff and knock on his door and find out how he is and is he feeding his cat, and do you have food? You know, this is a man who's very fastidious. Everything is in his place, and his home was completely trashed, his one-room apartment. Dishes had been thrown across the room. It was very chaotic. He was in the throes of very deep despair and depression. But we determined that he was coming out of it. He didn't need hospitalization. And I saw him a week later. He was doing really well. Gave him his mail from Social Security. We opened it together. Looked like some stuff was coming up and was going to be due really soon. I said, go take this over to Miss Brandy over at Peer Support, who can help you with this. He was going on a trip. This is actually a man who's an activist, and he's very involved all over the country with LGBT rights and AIDS prevention, immigration. He makes movies, documentaries, and so he gets funding from organizations. He doesn't get the funding. These organizations get funding, and they pay for him. They pay his plane fare to go somewhere and do something, and there was a conference that they wanted him at. So they bought him a plane ticket, and he was now in Colorado. And I get this email from Miss Brandy that says, what's going on with Marco? He's got all this stuff that's due, and he's gonna lose everything. It's all gonna go away. He's gonna fail this. He's not gonna get anything. So I call her up and I said, Brandy, through the SOAR process, you know that he doesn't have an income. He's about to be homeless. She says, well, he didn't tell me that, and that's when I find out about all the initial interview, and she is just spitting nails. She is mad, and I don't know why she's mad. Probably because she has this level of expectation for herself, this perfectionism that she wants to prove herself as doing everything right, that she's capable. And so the fact that something was going wrong, and this was her very first case, really triggered her. And so I'm like, I'm just trying to get information. I'm not trying to accuse her of anything, but you know how sometimes people just hear what they want to hear and they go on the attack. You probably have all had that experience. So she leaves work at 4:30, and I had on another matter had to go over to the building that she works on, and her supervisor was there, and her supervisor knows how she is, and it's a small office where they are, so she would have known what was going on. And I just said, wow, I need to take a deep breath and figure some stuff out, and I'm going to write an email to Brandy tomorrow, and I'll copy you in on it, and to make sure you know what's going on, because yeah, she was really inappropriate, and this application isn't going to go through, it looks like. And so and the supervisor got really defensive, which I was really surprised about. She said, well, I'm going to have to take her side on this one. I'm like, sides? What? I'm like, okay, well, all right, I'll just write my email, and you know, we'll just move on. We'll move forward. So on the way home, here's where the Ho'oponopono comes in. I didn't have Ho'oponopono in my mind, but what I did was I'm like, this lovely young woman is struggling. She's wounded, and she has gone through so much in her life to get to this point. And all I could feel for her was just overwhelming love, and how sorry I was that she had to go through what she went through in her life to get to where she is now. I wasn't thinking about it in the terms of I am responsible for that, but I was definitely responsible for all of my interactions with her. If I can't imagine that I'm responsible for her and everyone's life, as this is kind of intimating, I can certainly imagine that I am responsible for any and all interactions I have with her. So I have an hour drive home, and I was just thinking about nothing other than love for her, sympathy, just being empathetic to her struggles. And I was just going to write her just the nicest, sweetest email in the morning. And then instead, what happened was, she wrote me an email first thing in the morning. She said, hey, I thought about some other stuff. Can you come over so we can talk? And I'm like, sure. So I go over there. She is so apologetic. She is so sweet. She says, I'm so sorry. This was my first case, and I really wanted to get it right. I got here early. I got here an hour early so I can call my director for this program who's in Connecticut so I could find out how I could have done this better. And here's what I did wrong. Here's what I can do better on the next one. Here's what I can do better now on this one. Here's how we can move forward and make this a success. And the whole time, she was so apologetic to me. Like, it's okay. It's okay. Everything's well. And she said, I'm just so nervous when I talk to you on the phone, and I get really mean on the phone. I thought that was sweet that she said that. She says, I'm just so sorry. So I gave her a big hug, and all is well. I know this application is going to go through with flying colors. But the healing that took place within me when I got in the car, I'm just driving out in the open prairies, going through some hills and some mountains, and was able to just let go and breathe. And instantly I knew that this is not about what went wrong and how could it go better. It was about her and her healing and the love that she already is. And so that is what a life of prayer can do for us. We have to show up already prayed up. And by that, I don't mean doing an hour of prayer in the morning. If you are doing that, great. I mean being connected to Source. And any moment you can remind yourself to be connected to Source, because it is all good. That law is prevalent and working in all moments. And all we have to do sometimes is close the door and breathe. And remember that breath will just take you right inward to knowing that all is well. All is exactly as it should be. Because how could it be any different? We are all doing our very best, even when we're not. We are. These are the best choices that we are making in each and every moment. That is not just true for us. It's true for the people out there. It's true for the others. When we forget that we are not at one with all beings, we blame. But instead of blaming, anytime you blame, just catch yourself. This is my brother. This is my sister. I am she. She is me. Whatever it is for you, take yourself back to that center, even if it is just a breath, and know that all is well. All is exactly as it should be. And so it is.